Hello friend, my name is Becky. If you're new, welcome back to my kitchen. We are going to be doing a week of stovetop dinners and we're gonna get them all done in less than 30 minutes. The first recipe we are gonna be making is a garlic chicken Tuscan gnocchi bake, and I think it sounds absolutely delicious. So we do need to cook the gnocchi, so I just put on some water to boil, and then we need to cut up an onion and our chicken. So I think before we cut up our onion and chicken, we should get the pan for the chicken preheating. These are all brand new recipes to me. I've never made before, but they all sound really, really good. So the first recipe calls for 5 tablespoons of butter, which seems like a lot, but I think this is making the sauce. So we're gonna melt that. While that's melting, I'm gonna get the onion diced up. I was thinking about doing the chicken first because the chicken's gonna go in the stove first, but then I would have to use another knife. So we're gonna use one knife today, and we're gonna cut the onion up first so that we can try to have less dishes. So not only are we gonna attempt to try to have dinner on the table in less than 30 minutes this week, we are also gonna see if we can do it with as few dishes as possible, because what's the point of trying to get a fast dinner on the table if you then have to spend a ton of time doing dishes? I have one onion that I am going to dice. Now we can cut up our chicken. This recipe calls for chicken breast. I thawed out chicken thighs today just because that's what I grabbed out of my freezer. So we are going to use chicken thighs. I'm sure they will work just as good. I'm gonna cut any big pieces of fat off, and I'm gonna dice these into kind of bite-sized pieces. So much for trying to save a knife. I forgot I needed to shred some cheese. I don't have any pre-shredded right now. So I am gonna need a knife to cut open this mozzarella cheese. I need 1/2 cup of mozzarella cheese, and then this recipe does not call for any Parmesan cheese, but what is a Tuscan sun-dried tomato recipe without some Parmesan cheese? So I'm gonna go ahead and get some of that grated up as well, because I know Josh and I will both really like that. So I have just a little bit of mozzarella cheese I'm gonna get grated here. Calls for 1/2 cup. And I'm just gonna use however much I grate from that I cut off that block. So that looks about right. Now I have a chunk of Parmesan, and I'm probably gonna grate about 3 tablespoons of this to add to our dish. That's way more than we need. So I'm gonna put that in a little container. Our chicken has really nice color to it, so I'm gonna add the onions. One nice thing about using chicken thighs is I don't have to worry about them overcooking too much. Our water is boiling now for our gnocchi, so I'm gonna open these up. And then while I'm standing here, I'm gonna go ahead and open up my 1 cup jar of broth and then sun-dried tomatoes. Now the recipe I found online that I'm following calls for mushrooms. I don't have mushrooms, I have sun-dried tomatoes, and we're gonna be adding spinach to this. And so I thought this would be a good substitute. So I'm kind of cooking from the pantry as well. So not only are we trying to do 30-minute meals on the stovetop, but a little bit of pantry cooking too. Our onions are nice and soft, so we're gonna add some garlic and frozen spinach. I'm gonna let that thaw in there. My gnocchi are done, and I don't want them to overcook, and I'm not ready to put them quite in my sauce yet, because my sauce is not done yet, so I am gonna go ahead and put them into this bowl just so they don't continue to cook in this water. And one thing to note, if you are cooking homemade gnocchi from frozen, You wanna make sure your gnocchis are completely frozen when they go into the water. You don't want them to thaw at all before you cook them, or they will fall apart. So I'm gonna turn this off, get the lid back on this, and our sauce is almost done. It's just taking a little bit longer because I'm using that frozen spinach and I need the spinach to thaw. And my handle on my spatula is very hot. So as soon as this is thawed, we can add the next ingredients. I think I can go ahead and add them now. I'm gonna add some of my sun-dried tomatoes in here. These are a little bit bigger than I was expecting, so I think I'm gonna take some kitchen shears to them and just chop them up just a little bit. Our spinach is almost all thawed in there. I am gonna add a pinch of red pepper flake to help balance the flavors out. That's my own addition. And then now we can go ahead and add our cream. And this is what's gonna give us a velvety, velvety sauce. We're gonna mix that together, let that kind of reduce and marry all the flavors together for just a minute. I wish you could smell this sauce. It's smelling divine, and we haven't even added the cheese yet, so I'm gonna go ahead and add that next. I'm gonna reserve some of the Parmesan cheese for topping, and once we mix in this cheese and get it all melted and ooey gooey, I wanna go ahead and taste test. If I had realized how quick this sauce was gonna come together, I probably would have waited just a minute to put the gnocchi in, so that instead of putting them into a bowl, I could have just transferred them directly into this sauce. But that's okay, we're learning. Okay, that is all melted and it looks so good. Let's taste the sauce. If you don't have gnocchi or you don't like gnocchi, you could make this same sauce with regular pasta. That is incredible. Little bit of heat, the sweetness from the sun-dried tomatoes, and the contrast with the Parmesan cheese, I think is perfect. I went ahead and I turned the stove off. Oh my goodness, friend, this smells so good. We're gonna get our gnocchis in here. I'm just gonna gently toss them in this sauce. Now we get to make the perfect bite and taste it with the spinach, the sun-dried tomato, and a gnocchi, maybe a little piece of chicken. This was basically a pantry meal. I just took a recipe, I used what I had on hand. I had sun-dried tomatoes instead of mushrooms. I used frozen spinach instead of fresh. I used chicken thighs because I on accident pulled those out instead of chicken breast. And this is, well, I need to taste it, but I think this is gonna be a winner for Josh and I. Plus a little Parmesan cheese never hurt anyone. This is so good, friend. It's comforting, it's warm, it's rich, it's creamy. A little bit of sweetness from those sun-dried tomatoes, like I mentioned. Winner, winner. Josh is on his way home. He'll be here in just a minute to come home to a warm dinner. I'm excited, the house smells incredible. I will see you next time. We're in the kitchen making dinner on the stovetop in hopefully less than 30 minutes. This took me about 23 minutes to get this completely finished, from start to finish. Hello friend, welcome back. Today's stovetop 30-minute dinner is corn chowder. I've been in the kitchen for quite some time, getting a bunch of projects done. We just canned 40, or we're still in the process of canning 49 jars of black beans and pinto beans. They're processing now, so I'm gonna go ahead and get dinner started. I did make up some muffins to go along with dinner tonight, and dinner is gonna be really easy. This morning, we're making corn chowder. Did I say that? This morning, I went out into the garden, harvested 2 carrots and 2 stalks of celery. And I've got 1 onion here. I'm gonna get a couple tablespoons of butter melting while we chop the vegetables. think I'm probably only gonna cut one of those carrots because I don't want to make a huge amount of soup. I like to cut my celery pretty small, so I'm gonna run my knife lengthwise down, and then we'll just chop it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna just cut this big one, and these two little ones I'll put over here, and we'll use those for snacking. We're gonna get our mirepoix into our Dutch oven with salt and pepper. Our mirepoix is about halfway sauteed, so I'm gonna give myself a little cheat and use some hash browns instead of having to peel and dice the potatoes. I have these in my freezer and they kind of need to be used up, so we're gonna go ahead and get those in here. Let those defrost for a minute while the onions and onions and celery and carrots keep cooking. The next step is to open a jar of broth and get that poured in here. And we're gonna use this to scrape up any of the brown bits that are on the bottom of the pot. This soup comes together really, really quickly. This is what makes it so yummy. This is fresh corn I preserved up this summer. Still completely frozen, which is no problem. I'm gonna turn the heat up on the stove. We're gonna get that in there. That's gonna drop the temperature. That's why I wanna turn the heat up on the stove. I'm gonna cover it. And we're gonna let that simmer for a good 15 to 20 minutes. And then I'm gonna share with you my secret ingredient that I have always added into corn chowder. It's not traditional, but it is oh so good, and that will be coming up when we finish up the soup. My soup has been simmering away now, so now we're gonna add the ingredient that's gonna make this over the top delicious. We're gonna add some heavy cream, and that's not what's gonna make this over the top delicious. This is not traditional in corn chowder, but my sister and I used to make corn chowder all the time together, and we would always add shredded, sharp cheddar cheese. So that's what I'm gonna add now. I'm gonna take the immersion blender and just zip it a couple times in here. I still need to give that a taste test, but before I do that, real quick, I just washed up 2 green onions. I'm gonna garnish with green onions. I think the fresh green onions with the rich creaminess of the soup really just brings it over the top. So let's go ahead and give this soup a taste test now. Dinner is coming together in less than 30 minutes. Does that bring back memories? My sister and I used to make corn chowder. We lived together at my parents' house when we were in college. And we used to do a lot of cooking. We would find different recipes, sometimes completely random recipes we've never tried, and then sometimes they were tried and true. And if we were doing a tried and true recipe, it was always corn chowder, was kind of our go-to. And I don't even think I've ever made corn chowder for Josh. So let me show you how I'm gonna dish this up. See how rich and thick that is? Oh my goodness, this is gonna be such a good dinner. So there's the soup. And then we're gonna put a few green onions, and we are going to top it, yes, with a little bit more cheese. I'm gonna give this one more bite just because it's so good, and then I'm gonna dish up Josh and I's, and we're gonna go sit down and enjoy this warm, comforting fall meal. Go make some corn chowder. It's so good. Do yourself a favor, add a little bit of sharp cheddar cheese. So good. Another alternative, instead of using mirepoix, which is the carrot, celery, and onion, You can do this exact same recipe, but it's really, really good as well if you do onion and bell pepper instead of the carrot and celery, especially with the cheese. So good. I'll see you next time we're making a stovetop dinner. Friend, this next recipe I am so excited about. I saw it on Instagram, and I don't know about you, but I have so many saved recipes on my Instagram account, and I never make them. I was thinking it might be fun to do a week of just viral recipes, but this one I saw the other day. It looked so good, it looked so easy, and I happen to have all the ingredients on hand, so we're gonna go ahead and make it. And that is a red curry ramen soup. So let's go ahead and get going. The first thing I added to this is just a little bit of oil. Do you all have a bunch of recipes you want to try from, you know, Instagram or Pinterest or something like that? That is some ginger that you just haven't gotten around to trying because, you know, we tend to go with what we know, especially when we're busy and we don't have much time and we just need to get food on the table. I just added some garlic to that. And then I've got some curry paste. Actually, this is green curry. I want to do a red curry. This should come together in just a matter of minutes. So we're gonna get some curry paste in there. We're gonna saute all that together. It already smells incredible and it's only been cooking for a minute. While this is sauteing, it's almost done. I don't want the garlic to burn. I'm gonna open 1 jar of chicken broth, just a pint, because we're not gonna make a ton here. And then we've got 1 can of full fat coconut milk. You could make this with chicken. We're doing vegetarian today just because I wanna make it as quick and easy, and I think it's gonna be a hearty enough without any meat in it today. So this looks ready for me to go ahead and add our chicken broth. This is why I like, splashing a little bit. This is why I like to make my chicken broth really simple. So if I need to use it in, say, an Asian dish, it doesn't have a bunch of herbaceous notes to it that wouldn't typically go in this type of dish. Now we're gonna add our can of coconut milk and we're gonna let this simmer together for just a few minutes. And while that's simmering, we're gonna go ahead and wash and get our carrots ready. I will link the recipe that I saw, the video that I saw to make this. I'm just kind of using that as a guideline for what I'm doing based on what I have on hand. And I have a lot of carrots from the garden. She used carrots, and I think this is gonna be delicious. So the way we're going to process these carrots to put them into our curry, it's not gonna be a super brothy soup because I want it to be super hearty with the noodles. She also used, I think, if I remember correctly, I can't remember now, an egg noodle, but I have a bunch of ramen noodles, so I'm gonna use ramen. There's a ramen restaurant in Portland that has this curry ramen broth, and it's my absolute favorite. So that's kind of what when I saw the recipe, it made me think of that, and I thought, you know what, I can make that, I can make that. So that's what we're doing today. I did decide to peel my carrots this time, and I think I'm gonna cut the tops off. This could be, if it turns out well, a new favorite and an easy recipe to pull from. But sometimes it's just a matter of forcing yourself to kind of try new things to get those recipes in your arsenal. So for the carrots, I'm gonna make them into shreds like this, and this is how we're gonna put them in the soup so that they cook up really quickly. No, I think 2 carrots is probably gonna be a good amount for this. It's already smelling incredible, and it's only gonna get better because I'm gonna add a good tablespoon of peanut butter, a couple splashes of soy sauce, a drizzle of sesame oil. This is toasted sesame oil. A splash of vinegar. This is rice wine vinegar. Mix all that together. I want to give this a taste test. That is delicious. I think I'm going to add a tablespoon of brown sugar because my peanut butter is not sweetened and that curry paste has quite a bit of heat to it. I'm going to try it again. Well, let me make sure that sugar dissolves. Okay, that is incredible. Now that our broth has come to a rolling boil, I'm going to go ahead and put my ramen pucks in here. This is a rice ramen that I got at Costco. Let's see if I can get them all in the broth. Along with our carrots. So we're going to cook our carrots and our ramen at the same time. The ramen only takes a few minutes to cook. These are almost done. So that took less than 10 minutes to pull together. I had some green onions in the fridge I just sliced up. I grabbed some cilantro out of the garden this morning. I wanted this to be almost like a sauce and stew, which is what we've achieved. I do want to get a little bit more broth in there with some of the carrots. I'm going to top that with quite a bit of fresh cilantro from the garden, green onions, and some garlic chili paste. And a drizzle of sesame oil. This is one of the prettiest things I have made in a long time. So let's give this a try. See if I can do this without making a complete mess. The noodles look perfectly cooked. Look at that. That is so comforting, so delicious. It does have quite a bit of heat to it, and I love it. What would probably bring this over the top would be to squeeze a fresh lime over it. That is one thing I don't have, but I am glad that I have the fresh herbs because it's so savory with the peanut butter and the curry and all those savory flavors that the fresh herbs really kind of cut through that. If you got this at a restaurant, you would pay $15 for this bowl. And I used it with things I just had on hand. So I'm gonna go enjoy this. I'm gonna dish up Josh's. And I'm really excited that I have this recipe in my arsenal because this would make a fantastic quick lunch when you don't have any lunch fixings or leftovers in the fridge. So good. I will see you next time we make a 30-minute or less stovetop dinner. One pot recipe, we're at it again. I've got this pot on the stove. We are gonna make stovetop hamburger helper from scratch. I've never done this before. I think it's gonna be good. To our pot and our little bit of oil, we're gonna add 1 pound of ground beef, and we're gonna make this entire recipe in this one pot. This recipe is coming at the perfect time because I've been in the kitchen doing kitchen projects. We have salsa verde here, canning from this year's garden tomatillos. And so I'm even gonna use some pre-diced onions that I have in the freezer for this recipe, so I don't even have to dice up onions. I did not realize that until after I was reading it to how to cook the pasta that the recipe doesn't actually call for diced onion, it calls for onion powder. But I went ahead and threw onion in because in my mind, everything has onion in it. And so when I saw onion, I assumed it was a chopped onion, and it turns out beautiful with the chopped onion. So once we've got our onion and our meat in there, I did season it with salt and pepper, a tablespoon of ketchup, a couple teaspoons of mustard, Worcestershire sauce, and garlic powder. And to make this recipe even easier, if you want to try it, follow the recipe and just add onion powder. But this right here, friend, is the key to why this recipe is so incredibly convenient, is you add your pasta to the meat mixture dry. We are going to cook the pasta with some chicken broth, in the pot we are cooking the sauce in. So we didn't even have to get another pot out to boil some noodles, which is pretty incredible. This is faster than getting takeout. While the pot is cooking the pasta, it takes about 10 minutes for the pasta to cook and for the pasta to absorb the moisture of the broth. You can see here that it absorbed it really, really well. Once it's cooked, you're going to add the few final ingredients, which is some sour cream and the sharp cheddar cheese. If you wanted this recipe to be even faster, you could use pre-shredded cheese, but the recipe does say in the notes that you get a creamier, more velvety sauce if you shred it yourself, which is why I typically always shred my own cheese, because I think the texture when it melts is better. But if you're looking for a fast dinner where, you might want to get takeout, or you might be tempted to, try this recipe because it comes together so incredibly quickly. And then we're going to season it with some parsley. This dinner came together in less time than it took for the 15 minutes for my salsa verde to process. It smells incredible. It almost smells a little bit like a fast, well, I guess there's no mushrooms in it. I was gonna say a fast stroganoff, but it's got all that cheese in it, so it's gonna be, I think, really good. Let's give it a try. I don't know if Josh grew up with Hamburger Helper. I did add those parsley flakes. That was a little addition. And then when I re-looked at the recipe, I thought it called for diced onion. It called for dried onion. So I did add 2 ingredients to this recipe. But I think it smells incredible. It was easy, so I hope that I like it, because the fact that you cook the noodles in the pot with the sauce and the meat, talk about literal one pot meal. Wow. The mustard, I can taste that. Has a little twang to it with the sour cream, and the beef really balances it out. And then you've got that cheddar flavor. This is good. Now it's got me thinking, what other flavor profiles could I pull out and cook the noodles and the pasta in the pot all at once? Because the noodles have a great texture. I was worried that because they were cooked in the sauce and everything, they might have a weird texture. They have a great texture. You could use sausage instead of beef and totally transform the flavor of this dish. This is fantastic. I absolutely love it. That last dinner got me thinking, what else can I make one pot? So I put in Google, one pot dinner with Orzo, because I have Orzo and I like Orzo. Haven't made it in a while. So what I got is one pot garlic, butter, chicken, and Orzo, and we make the whole thing in the pot just like we did before, and it should take less than 30 minutes, if not quicker. So the first thing I need is some chicken, and this is another one of those recipes that is kind of a pantry pull item. Most of us have all of these ingredients in our kitchen at one time. I've been loving doing these series with you where we pick, the stovetop, the Instant Pot, the crock pot, or whatever it might be, and we make 5 dinners around it, because it's really increasing my repertoire of really fast and easy dinners. I'm learning a ton and I'm having a lot of fun. So thank you for being here as we pull these meals together. So I have some chicken thighs here. I'm going to pull 4 of them out, and I'm gonna go ahead and kind of remove any of the excess fat here, because these are gonna cook pretty quickly and not really have time to render that. So I'm just gonna take a second to trim it. You don't have to do this step. This recipe does call for chicken thighs, but I'm sure if you only have chicken breast, go ahead and use those instead. Now that we have our chicken thighs trimmed, I've got the stove on. We can go ahead and warm our skillet. You do want a skillet that has a lid, so I'm using my braising pan. That's maybe a little more oil than I need, but that's okay. So we're gonna heat this up. While that's heating up, I'm gonna go ahead and take a second to season one side of my chicken thighs. I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit of paprika on one side, salt and pepper. I'm going to season them on one side, and then I'll put them seasoned side down in the frying pan. And once I've got them in the pan, then I will add the seasoning to the other side of the chicken thighs so that we can have both sides of the chicken thighs nice and browned. This is another one of those recipes where the whole entire recipe is going to be made in this one pot, which is pretty incredible. So we don't need to use another pot to boil our orzo. We can do everything right in here, and that's why we need a pan with a lid. We are not looking to fully cook this chicken because it's gonna cook with the orzo. So once you've got it nice and browned, we're gonna remove it from the heat. And I was supposed to add oil and butter earlier, and so I'm gonna go ahead and add my butter now, and we're actually going to toast the orzo in this oil and butter, and it said you want a little bit of extra oil still in your pan as well. So I'm gonna use some of this butter and oil, hopefully to kind of scrape up some of those brown bits. We're gonna use broth in just a minute, so we'll be able to get all the brown bits up, but that's just all pure flavor. We can add our orzo now. And we want to toast the orzo in that oil and butter until it turns brown just a little bit. I think I'm going to let that just sit there for a minute, and I'm not going to stir it at all. So you can see how some of that orzo is toasting up nicely. So we're going to just work on turning this and scraping up those brown bits. Because that's just pure flavor right there. I think my orzo has some nice color to it. So I'm gonna add the garlic. This is green, even though it is garlic, because it's homegrown garlic powder with garlic scapes, which is a portion of the garlic when you grow yourself is green, and I dehydrated it and turned it into homegrown powder, and that's why, but it tastes just like garlic. Okay, that's got some good color to it. I don't want it to toast anymore. We've got our garlic in there. I just opened up 1 jar, so 4 cups of chicken broth, and whew, that's hot. It's a lot easier to see now how nice and toasted our orzo got. We're gonna take our chicken and we're gonna nestle it on top of the orzo. You could probably do more than 4 chicken thighs. Probably would be better. Pour that goodness in there for the amount of orzo, but that's how many it called for, so that's what I'm doing. And then we're gonna put the lid on it and have it simmer for 20 minutes. Once this is done simmering, then we've got a couple more ingredients, but it's basically done at this, well, you know what I think I'm gonna add? This is not in the recipe. But I want this to be a true 1-pot recipe, so I'm gonna add some frozen peas to this. If you had spinach, I think spinach would probably go really well in this as well. So now we're gonna put the lid back on and let that simmer for 20 minutes. I did end up putting this on a smaller burner so it could simmer a little bit slower, and I stirred it about twice through the cooking process just to make sure it wasn't sticking. The chicken is fully cooked through. I checked its temperature and it's at 165 degrees. So now what we're gonna do, because the orzo is cooked, chicken's cooked, we're gonna take Parmesan cheese and just cover the top with Parmesan cheese. You could even put a little bit of cream in here if you wanted. I'm gonna put the lid on just so that that can kind of melt a little bit. I'm gonna turn the heat off and I'm gonna let the residual heat melt that cheese. I think it should be done. Oh my goodness, yes. Let's give this a little taste test. Josh is not quite ready for dinner yet, so we're just going to give it a try. Let's get a little piece of chicken here. I'm gonna put the lid back on so it stays nice and warm for when Josh is ready for dinner. Oh my goodness. It smells so good. I am so glad I decided to add the peas because that just made it a totally 1-pot dinner. I need to grab a fork so we can cut into the chicken. The chicken is so tender. That's the beauty of chicken thighs. I love using chicken thighs because it's really hard to overcook them and make them dry. But I'm sure you could substitute, if you prefer chicken thighs, you could substitute chicken thighs in this recipe. Okay, we're gonna make a perfect bite. We've got some cheese, some peas, some orzo, and let this cool off for just a second, and then we're gonna try it. I did add the paprika too. So the paprika was my addition because I don't have any cracked black pepper right now. And I didn't feel like pulling out my blender or my mortar and pestle to do that. So I substituted paprika, and then maybe tomorrow I'll grind up some pepper. I have pepper in my house, I just don't have any ground. Friend, these dinners we've been making, these one-pot dinners, have just all exceeded my expectations. This would be good if you had like maybe a 1/4 cup or a 1/2 cup of cream to drizzle right at the end to add a little bit of sweetness. But just like this, wow, so good. I just set my bowl down because I want to eat dinner with Josh when he is ready for dinner. I love the texture of orzo. I don't cook it with it a lot. I like to make orzo pasta salads, but I really like the texture of it, so I should cook with it more. This has got me thinking. All these recipes have got me thinking about how to get homemade, easy, pantry kind of pull meals on our dinner table with less time and less dishes. And this, very few dishes. We have the pot, the knife, the cutting board, and a couple spoons, and that was it. So a win in my book, I consider that. If you want to see some more of these 5 recipe meals inspired by either a crock pot or an Instapot, I can put those there. You can go enjoy between now and my next upload. I just want to thank you for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. I hope this was encouraging, got your creative juices flowing, and see that you can adapt recipes if you find them online. And instead of having peas, you could put spinach if you had spinach in this. I added that, it wasn't in the recipe, but now I just made a one-pot meal. So friend, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being you. I really appreciate the fact that you take time out of your day to spend time with me in my kitchen, in my garden, in my pantry, at the grocery store when we go grocery shopping. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. And I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.